I always felt that people is by far the most important, because if you got the people on board, if you got the other party's team on board, especially also their leadership team, if everybody feels, hey, there's something in it for me, I can grow, I have like a role in this new company, we can build something really cool together, then actually the rest really falls into place.
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Sylvan.
Alex, a warm welcome to the Swisspreneur Show. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm obviously an avid listener of your show, so I'm very happy to be here today.
Amazing. That's the best precondition to a successful podcast. You're the co-founder and CEO at GuestReady, a tech-driven hospitality brand that focuses on short-term rentals. Before we talk about your story, how you built the company, you actually started working in consultancy after university until about 2015, and then you decided to take a job in Taiwan and then the Philippines. Why change the scenery?
Yeah, so when I graduated from university, when I graduated from LSE in London, it wasn't very common to join a startup or to even start your own business. Most people just went into finance or consulting, and that's pretty much actually what I did as well. So I started my career at Oliver Wyman, working as a management consultant, and did that for a couple of years. And for me, that was a great way to start my career. I worked in over 8 different countries, in places like Hong Kong or New York as well, and a lot of places in Europe as well. A lot of great projects, some of them really interesting, some of them maybe a little bit less interesting. In the end, I knew that I wanted to do something more entrepreneurial. It was just the way to get my professional career started. Mm-hmm. And that's when I looked at positions at Rocket Internet, applied there, and I had the chance to meet Mark Sumber in London. And they had just raised 200 million for their Foodpanda venture in doing food delivery in Asia. And previously I had done an internship in China and an exchange semester in Taiwan. So they kind of saw the Asia angle, and they saw that I was an ex-management consultant, so kind of fit perfectly the target scheme for Rocket Internet back then. And the rest is history. I joined them and I became country managing director in Philippines and in Taiwan.
Amazing. And what has actually this year of working in a completely different ecosystem taught you, and how has it changed you?
Yeah, it's been a really fascinating time. It's been a time where I learned a lot about working in different cultures. Asian working cultures are obviously very different, and I've had spent already a year as a student there or doing an internship, but it's different when you go and you're actually a boss and you have a lot of responsibility. So it's quite different. In Europe, we have quite flat hierarchies in general, I would say, compared to Asia, where it's much more hierarchical. Everybody's looking towards the boss to say what to do and so on. In Europe, it's maybe a bit more collaborative, or also the way how you say things. In Europe, we can be quite direct. We can just speak our mind, and in Asia, you better kind of read between the lines and try to figure out what people are really saying, like what they really think. So that's been a very good and great experience for me to learn how to work with people from different cultures. And it's been a great challenge for me as well, especially in Taiwan. In Philippines, the working language was English, but in Taiwan it was Chinese. And I did speak Chinese. I was the only foreigner there, actually. And
that's crazy.
That was quite a challenge. And my Chinese was, I would say, at a level that was pretty good already before, but more conversational. And it's different if you hold interviews in Chinese, or if you have to stand in front of the whole company, 100 people, and give a monthly update or hold a speech, or do performance reviews in Chinese. So that was a great challenge for me, and I learned a lot during that time.
Amazing. And, after this crazy move of going and working abroad, you actually pulled off another one. You then decided to start a startup. Where does this entrepreneurial drive come from? Did you have any role models in your family that inspired you, or why was starting a startup or your own company then the right next move?
Yeah, so I didn't have specific role models in my family, actually, but I was always quite interested in entrepreneurship. And that was actually one of the reasons why I wanted to join a consulting firm, because I thought it gives me a lot of really good insights into different companies. In the end, it gave me a lot of insights into large corporates, which are not very entrepreneurial anymore. But yeah, for me, it was that sort of idea when I joined consulting to get exposure. And then it was just a natural continuation of the path of joining consulting, then a larger startup, and then eventually starting my own business. So it didn't feel that crazy at that time. Although I would say in hindsight, going from being a consultant, flying business class, staying at fancy hotels, and then a year later, cleaning apartments, getting them ready for guests. That's a bit of a crazy move indeed.
Was that easy for you? Because we always hear the word lifestyle inflation or lifestyle change, right? So that's quite a shift from quite a comfortable life, a high standard of living, flying business class, fancy hotels, to going back to doing everything yourself and probably flying economy and not business class anymore. Was that an easy shift to go back? Because that's usually very difficult for people.
Yeah, you're right. Luckily, I never really had that lifestyle inflation. It's quite different in London, where usually it's very normal in the first couple of years of your career to actually do flat shares. So I was doing that, the salaries, and I was thinking a lot about that. But in Zurich, I would have earned more than double than what I earned in London at the same firm for the same job. But London is a great place to start career. And that's why I think firms get away with paying less. So I never really had that lifestyle inflation, apart from, of course, when it was flying for business or staying somewhere for business. But even that for me wasn't the most important. Also, when I travel personally, I always like a local experience. I wouldn't stay in some bland hotels. I'd like to stay in a boutique hotel or in a short-term rental or staying in a homestay or so. And I think that's always much more interesting than staying somewhere in a big corporate hotel.
So you managed this transition very well.
Yes.
You then founded or co-founded GuestReady in 2016. You were in total 3 co-founders. Where have you met the other 2 guys, Patrick and Chris?
Yeah, so I guess it's pretty common. We met at university, and we knew each other from them. And then actually Chris worked at Foodpanda as well. He started actually Foodpanda in 2012, I believe. So when I joined Foodpanda, when I got an offer to join them, I got back in touch with him, and he was in Asia back during that time as well. So when I then moved over there, we were in touch more frequently, and he came to Taiwan as well. And we met and we started to brainstorm about what kind of cool business ideas we could launch. And out of that, GuestReady was born.
And how did that business idea come about? Did you have a personal frustration, or were you landlords yourself renting out and were not happy with the experience there? How did the idea of GuestReady come about?
Yeah, so it was definitely also related to our own experience. We all love traveling, and I was also hosting on Airbnb myself, so we kind of saw it from both sides. And as mentioned, when we travel, then, or at least for myself, I really appreciate this local experience. And then, of course, traveling also for business, I also could appreciate the benefits of a hotel when you just immediately know what you get and there's no uncertainty and so on. So for us at GuestReady, it was actually the idea to bring this standard of a hotel, the quality standard, together with the comfort of a home and that local unique character of homes. And that was the idea for guests. And then for owners, we saw that short-term rentals are taking off massively globally. Also, there's more and more people investing in second homes and so on. And people want to monetize those assets, don't want to keep them empty. But it's very hard actually to participate if you don't have anyone that is taking care of it.
It's a lot of work.
Because it can turn into a 24/7 job. And most people don't want that. So, and that was also my experience of listing on Airbnb, that it's very easy to get a booking, but then actually the hard work starts afterwards when you have to prepare the property for your guests and message with them and do the cleaning, the linen, and everything. And we felt that we can really bring a lot of value add by having an integrated platform. And that was somewhat related to our experience at Foodpanda, where initially we also just started off being a booking layer, where we would connect the people that were ordering food with the restaurants. And then we quickly realized that restaurants are very good at cooking the food. They're not very good at delivering the food. So the food would arrive late, would be spilled, would be all over the place. And then that's the moment when we said, hey, to make this really scalable, to make it a good customer experience, we have to go one level deeper in the value chain and actually take care of the delivery as well. And that is also what we've seen in maybe a few other verticals like eBay versus Amazon. eBay is just a platform layer, just connecting two dots. And then Amazon said, okay, we're actually more integrated. We take care of the fulfillment too. No. And that can help to create a better customer experience.
I like that analogy and the comparisons that you just drew. Amazing. So GuestReady is basically the Swiss Army knife solution for short-term rentals. But for our guests who might not be familiar with your platform, can you quickly explain which services you actually offer and cover with GuestReady?
Yeah, so these services, obviously we have a two-sided marketplace in a way integrated. So for the guests, we provide fully furnished, fully managed properties where they can just book online and then arrive and have an amazing stay in some of the most sought-after locations in Europe, mostly in the Middle East. And for owners, we provide an end-to-end solution where they can just hand us over the keys of their property, basically, and we take it from there. We list across different platforms. We list on GuestReady.com, but also on Airbnb or Booking.com, Expedia, just to give the maximum exposure to get the most bookings for them. We do the pricing optimization. We have an algorithm for that. That is really a bit like how airline pricing works or hotel pricing that updates daily based on the supply and demand in the market. Nice. Then we message with the guests that, as we know, can be a 24/7 job. So we have a 24/7 team that is always available for the guests. And we also orchestrate and coordinate the cleaning services and linen and even maintenance, because many property owners, they're not physically present in the city where their property is located. So we have to provide a full end-to-end solution. And those services we provide with partners with partner companies that we subcontract, basically. Yeah.
It sounds like you're solving a big problem, especially for the house or apartment owners, because, you don't want to have a second or third job, right? Mm-hmm. Usually in these two-sided platforms, you have to first focus on one side, as like Uber or other companies did, and then the other side comes automatically or needs a little bit less of a push. Which side was more important for you to get started, to really kick off your offering into your platform?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's exactly the same at GuestReady. We always said that supply is the core for us, because essentially we can drive the demand through third-party booking platforms like Booking.com, like Airbnb, like Expedia, and there's a few others as well that we list on. So really the supply is the bottleneck. But as we grow, actually, we're shifting also more and more our focus towards the demand side. Now that we have a sizable portfolio, we now manage over 4,500 properties. Wow. And in some cities, we have hundreds of properties. It becomes much more attractive also for guests to book directly with GuestReady. And that's what we're seeing, that actually our direct booking channel is gaining a lot of traction. We also integrate in meta search, for example, Google Travel. They have a vacation rental vertical. We get traffic to our website through that. So there's a lot that we're doing now also on the guest side. We're also about to relaunch our brand, a refined version, a renewed version of our brand, because the original brand was built 7 years ago with a $300 budget on 99 designs. So that's how we started, how we kicked off, and we're going to do much more also on the branding side and on the guest side. Yeah.
And that's a really interesting development. Now you sort of have more power to also, focus on the actual demand side. And I guess that also allows you to then increase your margins, because you don't have to pay any fees to Airbnb or Booking.com or any other platforms.
Yeah, that's right. Basically, how it works, our model is that we take a management fee, variable management fee, a commission, plus a fixed turnover fee per booking. And the commission that Airbnb charges or Booking.com is sort of on top. Yeah. And if we drive the booking, then we take that extra commission for getting the booking. And you're right. So we have a margin expansion there, and we get more.
So for the landlords, it's basically the same. It doesn't matter where the booking comes from. But for you, as a business perspective, much more interesting if you can generate the booking, right?
Absolutely. I think it's even a win-win for the landlord, because when we get the booking, we typically charge a bit less. So Booking.com or Airbnb, they would charge around like 15 to 18%. And we typically charge more like 12% or so. So it's a win-win. We get 12% extra and the owner has to pay less. So, and the guest has also to pay less. So it's
fantastic.
It's great.
Absolutely. And this business model, you know, when it comes to investing, the landlords probably always look at what is my return on the capital that I put in there with the short-term rental space. Is there an average rate of return that you can call out? I know it heavily depends on the property, on the location, etc. But is there something that you should aim for, or that you think this is roughly the return that you can expect with a property in a decent location?
Yeah, so we have very different use cases actually of landlords that use GuestReady. This can be owners in cities that travel frequently, that have maybe a second home. When they stay at the second home, they actually rent out their primary residence with us.
Nice.
Then we have second homes that are mostly available, but sometimes the owners are staying themselves as well for maybe a couple of weeks or a couple of months per year. And then we have full-time investment properties as well. Yeah. So what you're talking about, the rentability, is probably more relevant for those full-time investment property owners. Yeah. And there, I think we can, so generally we achieve a higher yield, but it depends heavily on the location. So the more central the location is, the better. It depends also on the type of property. Typically what we see is this yield uplift is more predominant in smaller properties, maybe studios or one-bedroom apartments. Yeah. And then if it's bigger properties, they're maybe more suitable to rent out long-term.
Got it.
So it depends really quite a lot on the specific circumstances.
But that's also where you help to optimize and to find the right positioning in the market, I guess.
Yeah, so often we also have investors that come to us and say, like, where's the best place to invest? What would you recommend? And then we're also happy to help with advice.
How does it work when a new landowner or property owner basically wants to collaborate with you? Do you have any requirements they need to meet? Are there any properties where you say, well, this looks nice, but it's like outside of our location, so it's really difficult to market it, so that's why you better don't collaborate? How does that process, the sign-up process for landlords, work?
Yeah, so you're right. It's a location-based service. So we cover about 30 cities. So you have to be in one of the locations that we cover. Then we require at least 3 months availability. In the beginning, we sometimes rented out properties for a week or two, and then we realized it's a lot of work to actually get to know the property, to onboard it. Yeah. We have a whole onboarding questionnaire with 100, 200 questions that the owners fill in, or we fill in for them, because that investment in the beginning pays off over the lifetime of the property, because we know everything and we never need to go to the property to answer any questions from guests. Our customer service team just knows that because it's all in the system. Okay. So yeah, we require 3 months availability, and then we have a whole list of requirements of how the property has to be equipped, what kind of amenities have to be there, because we want to provide the best spaces for our guests.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the platform before. So what role does technology play at GuestReady? Because from the outside perspective, it looks like a brick and mortar business a bit, but there's much more technology behind the scenes than one might think.
Yeah, it's heavily inspired again by this experience that we had with Foodpanda, where when we built that platform between the restaurants, between the guests, between the restaurants, between the eaters and the drivers that would deliver the food, we really had to build a technology suite for all these different stakeholders, all these different parties that are involved in the processes. So for us, it's the same. We have apps for the owners where they can see their bookings, where they can open and close their calendar dates. We have apps for the partners that deliver the cleaning and so where they can see where the next jobs are, when they have to be where, what exactly they have to do there, and then the same for guests where they can book and so on. And behind the scenes, there's this whole level of synchronization. We have integrations with the different booking channels. These are APIs where we make sure that the calendars are synchronized, that the prices are synchronized, that the content of the listings is everywhere the same. So we just put up one listing internally in our system. It's called Rental Ready, actually, our technology. And then by clicking a button, it kind of just gets published to all the different channels. So there's a lot of technology involved, and this technology helps us to streamline processes, helps us to make the whole system scalable. And we couldn't have gone to 4,500 properties if we hadn't had our own in-house technology.
I like that. There's much more technology behind it than you actually think. And you even decided to also sell that as a SaaS solution to other companies. That's quite an unusual step because one might think, hey, this is your USP. This allows you to manage a lot of properties very efficiently. Why was that still the right decision to sell SaaS licenses to your software?
Yeah, really, really good question again. We invested heavily in this software and this technology suite, and whenever we were at industry conferences speaking with others in our industry, usually smaller property managers, they were really excited about this solution, and they asked us, can we have access to it? And we always had to decline, unfortunately. Yeah. So eventually we said, like, why actually not? Why not opening this technology up? This industry is a massive global industry. It's like $150 billion plus global market opportunity, and it's highly fragmented. Actually, there's over 100,000 property managers out there, mostly small mom and pop shops that manage maybe 10, 20, 50, 100 properties. So we said this space, it is consolidating. There's global leaders like GuestReady that are going to come out of this, but then at the same time, it will always be fragmented as well at the lower end, and we can actually provide technology to that fragmented space and have a massive opportunity of 100,000 property managers that could use the technology. So we said we're making it available, and I would say a lot of these property managers, they manage properties that kind of come through their network. Mm-hmm. That's how they built their business. So these properties wouldn't come to GuestReady anyway, because it's just friends and family that they know and they like this local property manager.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's really a strategic addition to your core business that is just there, and makes a lot of sense to also take the money from that segment as well.
Yeah, I sometimes draw a conclusion as well, or draw a parallel to the largest online supermarket in the UK called Ocado, and they also built their own in-house technology, and now they have a technology business unit where actually they sell this technology to other supermarkets. So it's very similar.
Nice.
So we got a bit inspired by that as well.
Very nice. You are, of course, active in the tourism industry, and we all know what happened in 2020. COVID hit, travel was sort of banned, not possible anymore. So I assume you were heavily affected by the COVID lockdowns all over the world. How did you navigate GuestReady through that crisis, basically?
Yeah, that was a super challenging and difficult time for us. You're absolutely right, because we were about to come into the high season, which is sort of shifting from February, which is the last month of the low season in Europe, and then March is kind of a middle month, and in April really the high season starts to kick off with Easter. So we're looking forward to the high season, and then actually what happened, instead of our revenues doubling that we almost expected, the revenues dropped by 80%. So it was super tough. and we had to make a lot of difficult decisions. I would say there's a few things that got us through. When I summarize them, I would say probably 3 things. First, firefighting, extinguishing the fire, of course, getting back on track. Second, just continuous leadership and engagement of the team during that crisis. And thirdly, really transparent and open and honest communication. And the firefighting was obviously centered around getting enough runway, so getting more liquidity in. We did that from existing investors that luckily continued to believe in GuestReady despite all the circumstances and despite we're not knowing if there's going to be a vaccine that is going to solve this pandemic. We also got some COVID loans, and unfortunately we also had to do layoffs, and that was extremely tough because these were really good people that built the business together with us. So it was a difficult time. But we managed to stabilize the business, and then during that time it was also about being present as a leader, keeping the team engaged. And during that time I also realized that if I was to be a good leader during this time, I had to take care of myself too, because it's been a very taxing time for myself. So being alone in an apartment in London in the lockdown where you cannot leave, and seeing the company falling to pieces, it was very difficult. But I started to establish a good routine, doing yoga in the morning, eating healthy food, getting enough sleep, exercising in the evening, doing meditation, all these kind of things. And I think that really allowed me to keep a relatively clear head during that time, and allowed me to stay focused and also be somewhat stoic about what's happening, because there's only just so much that you can influence.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So I was basically telling myself, don't lose your head over things that you cannot influence anyway, and just focus on the things that you can influence. And that's what I did.
I mean, that's brutal. You know, I just imagine myself in that situation, and I would go completely nuts, because this is a really difficult situation to manage. Because in that moment, you don't know, will it be over in 1 week? Will it be over in 2 years? Nobody knows, right? And
absolutely,
to be in there, to not give up, and to try to keep your sanity on a personal level, to function, that's tough.
Yeah, it was very tough. But we pulled through, and we also kept the team engaged. And I also have to be grateful for the team that they really stuck through with us during that time, and did their best too. And we did team engagements. We have weekly all hands calls, and we did team building activities and so on. And also I felt that it's really important that I communicate frequently and openly and transparently, so that everybody knew what was going on, what we also didn't know, and that they felt that we have the best at heart for the company, and giving the best. And I think that was important. Yeah.
You mentioned the weekly all hands. That certainly helped to be close to the team, to communicate. What other forms of communication did you use to really make that happen, and don't let the team hang in there, or let room for speculation to a certain degree?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. So I think for a lot of companies during COVID, the way how they manage the company completely changed. Mm-hmm. For GuestReady, it actually stayed relatively the same, because we already had all-hand Zoom calls with everybody on camera. We already had everybody working on Slack as the main tool, Google Drive, collaboration tools, and so on and so forth. So that didn't change too much. I think just maybe the frequency increased. So in addition to the weekly all-hands call, where I would give a status update, I would also write weekly longer posts on Slack, where I gave an update, because so much was happening especially during the first couple of weeks of the pandemic. So I did that, and then we had these team building activities also online that we have, and when we implemented one-on-one coffee chats, random coffee chats where you get paired up with somebody. Right. Small things, but they all helped during that time.
But yeah, you really had to put in the effort to make it work. And that was something you already did before, because the process of internationalization was something you've been working on before. You're active in 5 countries now. And I wonder, how do you actually shape and really build the culture with a team that is working from different locations and even different countries?
Yeah, so you're right. Actually, we've been an international company from day one. We actually launched in a couple of cities at the same time, which is something that I'm not sure if I would recommend. But
sounds very stressful.
It is not the easy way to go, let's say it this way. Yeah. But it really helped us to build a strong company culture that is going across borders. It helped us to build a system that works across cities, across different languages, religions, whatnot. So we're a very diverse company, but we all share the same values. And one thing that we actually did every year from the beginning on, except of during the COVID time, is what we call a global meetup. It's the time when we bring people from all different locations together in one place. Cool. And have a couple of days where we work really extensively, do workshops. And the second time we did that, about a bit more than a year in, we worked a lot on our values, and actually we had an exercise where each of us would write the values that we think are GuestReady's values, are important for GuestReady, would write them on a piece of paper and put them on the wall. And it was literally like hundreds of post-it notes, and we'd cluster them and we'd try to narrow them down. It was very hard to actually bring it down to 10 values, but that's what we did. And then we had those 10 values, and actually a couple of years later we realized that 10 values is probably still too much because it's hard to remember them. Right. And we narrowed that down to 5 values now, and we're in the process of actually narrowing it further down to 4 core values. Right. So it's a constant process to formalizing these values, to also have the team being part of those values. It's not just something that the management team came up with, but that was also driven by everybody in the company. And it's really important for the culture, and to have the same culture across different locations.
So I really take away, it's about involving the team in the process, but also making room for physical meetups at least once a year, maybe even more often, whenever possible, to have the team together and to work on these things.
Yeah, that's super helpful to have such a physical meetup once in a while. And by now we also have teams, for example, operations or product team or the finance team actually organizing such smaller meetups. Yeah. And that's super helpful. And in a couple of weeks we'll have our leadership meetup in Lisbon, and now it's going to be around 17 people, and this used to be the size of our global meetup in the early days. So, yeah,
things change.
Yeah, things change. Yeah, last year we had the largest meetup with close to 100 people. Wow. In Morocco, and it was fantastic.
Cool. Another thing when you go international that you also have to consider are the local laws and requirements, because in the space that you're in, short-term rentals, there are very different ways to go about it depending on the country or even the city. How do you deal with that? Because that sounds like quite a complicated and complex thing to do.
Yeah, it's right that there are local laws and local requirements, and we have to follow them everywhere. And in general, it's not that complicated. They're quite similar. Okay. And we can also solve this with technology. So, for example, in Portugal, there's a requirement that you have to submit the guest details to the authorities. And we have now an integration where this is done automatically with API. Nice. So it's very helpful. But what I would say, what there's obviously other laws that are applicable to all businesses, like employment law, sure, like taxes, like the way how you do your bookkeeping, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of local specificities that maybe in the beginning we underestimated a bit, and we realized that it's very beneficial to actually get to a reasonable scale in local markets. And we realized that in each of these local markets we can actually grow 10, 20 X, it's not a problem. There's still so much room. So instead of going to new markets, we currently are quite focused on just exploring the potential in the markets that we're in already, because there's still so much potential for us.
Nice. And with that being said, you probably also had to face a decision one day, because you mentioned you have investors on board, to either go the VC money way, to say, okay, we take investors on board, we fundraise to actually grow the company, versus growing profitably and saying we do focus on organic growth, we are a profitable company, we take it slower. Is that still something that is on your plate today or in your head when making decisions? Because who knows, hopefully not, but there might be another crisis coming, and if you're a profitable company, that can give you a bit longer runway and be less dependent on investors.
Yeah, I think in the beginning, we always had very high ambitions for GuestReady, building a global category leader. So it was clear that we would take outside investment. If that would come from VCs or from other investors, wasn't necessarily set in stone. But we always knew that we wanted to build something massively scalable, and that also in the beginning we had to invest in technology, we had to invest in building up our brand, our team, and so on. So it was clear that we would go down the investment route. Now we're getting to a level where we're actually very close to break even, and where we can also determine our own fate just by how much are we expanding into new markets, for example, how much are we investing in technology. And yes, if we raise more money, we can do more things. We can also acquire other companies maybe, or we can open one new market. But if we don't raise additional money, then we can still continue to grow nicely, do a lot of things, and just maybe at a bit of a slower pace.
And acquiring other companies, that's something you actually did multiple times, I think 7 times already. Why is growth through acquisition a good strategy or a good fit for you?
Yeah, we never really thought that growing with acquisitions would be one way that we could accelerate our organic growth. We always thought that we would just focus on building the best product, building the best trend, the best brand, the best technology, and scale like that. Until about a year and a half into our journey, this opportunity came along to buy a competitor, where basically the founder of this business wanted to leave the business due to personal circumstances. And we started discussing, and it seemed like a great fit, but we were just about to close a funding round, and we didn't have the money yet. So I basically told this founder that if she wanted to sell the business very quickly, then if that's her goal, then she should find somebody else. And we didn't hear from each other for about 3 months. And then she came back and said, Alex, we have to do this deal. And I was like, okay, what's going on? Because, is there something wrong with this company that, that she doesn't find somebody else to buy? And she said, no, I have another buyer, but I just don't like them. I feel that there's a much better fit with GuestReady. For me, it's really important. More important than the money is the importance of the continuity of the team, of the customers, of everything that I've built up. So I said, we have a term sheet. We don't have the money yet, but if you're willing, we can do a deal now. And we actually did a deal based on just the term sheet, and we would pay her after we received the money. And that's what happened. We closed the deal. We closed also the investment, and it was a win-win. And then we learned a lot through that process. We grew the portfolio, and this then opened our mind to say, actually, we're open for more of these opportunities. So the other acquisitions were also quite opportunistic. The main benefit, and this is not a model that I would recommend to every kind of business, right? Our market, as I mentioned, is very fragmented, and we can buy basically these portfolios and bring them on to our platform. So it's not necessarily a model that works for all kind of businesses, but for us it works pretty well, and it's a good way to accelerate our organic growth.
And you have certainly figured out the technical integration, because you have the software, you have the technology there in the background. What about the cultural integration? Because that's a whole nother level that you also have to consider when doing an acquisition.
Absolutely, yeah. I always thought that in the post-merger integration, in that phase, the PMI phase, it's about people, processes, and products or technology, those three aspects. And out of those three aspects, I always felt that people is by far the most important, because if you got the people on board, if you got the other party's team on board, especially also their leadership team, if everybody feels, hey, there's something in it for me, I can grow, I have like a role in this new company, we can build something really cool together, then actually the rest really falls into place. And that's why in those phases we were always focused a lot on creating an org structure that makes sense, engaging the team, also getting to know them on a personal level, facilitate this engagement between the two teams, and making sure that everybody is excited about the common journey.
That makes a lot of sense. And now with a business like yours, it seems from the outside perspective, the logical step to eventually sell to Airbnb, Booking.com, or any of these platforms. Is that something you have on your mind to think about who could we sell GuestReady to? Or do you have other plans, maybe even an IPO one day?
Yeah, we actually were never really too focused on building a business just for exiting. We were always focused on building a really solid business that makes a lot of sense to us, that is highly attractive to us. So we felt that if we do this, then actually there's many opportunities for us in the future, either being acquired or maybe going public. I mean, this is probably not the right time to consider this now because the stock markets are not very favorable at this moment. But yeah, there's plenty of opportunities. One of them could be for a platform like Airbnb to acquire us and go down one step deeper in the value chain. There's also a lot of other large hospitality brands that are eyeing the short-term rental market that could be very interesting for them. Or also private equity, actually. They really like our space as well. They see that there's a lot to do. They see that it's a highly fragmented space as well. And they're also very excited about kind of a roll-up play or buy and build. So there's a lot of ways for us to go. Many
opportunities. But I like what you said, focus on building a successful business, and then you have different options to choose from, and you're not sort of narrowed down on only one possible path. I think that's a good statement. Now, we of course also wonder what will be next for GuestReady, but also for you, Alex, as an individual.
Yeah, so I've been on this journey for 7 years. It's been a while, but I'm still very excited about what we can do with GuestReady, about the opportunities ahead. It's still a very nascent industry, still a very nascent market. There's a lot to do. Last year, we had 400,000 guests staying with us, and we achieved a booking value of around 90 million Swiss francs. And we want to increase this massively by 2025. We want to be at over 2 million guests per year and over 500 million in booking value. So we have ambitious targets. There's some work that we have to put in to make this happen. I mean, these are just targets, right? But we remain ambitious and we see the opportunity. So personally, I want to continue with this journey. Yeah.
Let's go, right? To wrap up the episode today, we also have some rapid fire questions for you. So I either give you a short question or different options to choose from, and you have to answer in one sentence. You ready?
Sounds good.
What compliment do you hear the most?
Often I hear that I look younger than I am, really, and that used to annoy me a lot, but I think it starts to become a compliment.
It switches. How old are you today?
I'm 36.
Nice. Favorite travel destination?
So for that one, I'll have to pick a GuestReady destination, of course,
Sure.
And I'm going to pick Bordeaux because it's a really nice place. It's sort of a smaller, more relaxed, and even more charming version of Paris.
Nice. When asked, how are you? How often do you reply truthfully?
So after 12 years in the UK, I'm quite used to this phrase, and I don't often answer it very truthfully anymore.
It's a part of the culture, I guess. What is the coolest GuestReady property that you have listed?
So recently we onboarded a really spectacular beach villa with pool, just south of Lisbon, and that's probably counting as one of the most spectacular properties that we have.
I think I want to get the link, please. What are you most qualified to give advice about?
I'm personally quite a generalist as a CEO in that role, but also as a person. So I would say I'm probably more qualified to give advice on general management topics or entrepreneurship. And I'm also good for giving advice on where is the best gelato in town. I try to be healthy, but this is one of my guilty pleasures.
Amazing. So. Now the last one, London, Zurich or Lisbon?
It's got to be the buzz of London combined with the lifestyle and the quality of life of Zurich.
Very nice. Cool. Alex, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a pleasure having you here, not only as an avid listener, but now also as a guest. Thank you so much, and all the best and lots of success for the future of GuestReady.
Thank you so much, Silvan, for having me, for being my host, and for this wonderful interview.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.